Good morning. Good morning and welcome to Family Caregivers of BC Mindfulness Practice. I am Kate Landreth and I'm the education lead with Family Caregivers of BC. And it's a pleasure to guide you today in your mindfulness practice. So take a moment to get yourself comfortable in a seated position or any other shape that allows your body to be alert. So we want it to be awake, but also relaxed here. Good. And then you might just find a few deep breaths. And for the next 10 to 15 minutes, if your aim can be to put whatever you are doing on pause and enter into this space together in the spirit of paying attention and focusing on one thing. So I thank you for joining. When preparing for this session this morning, I came across a story that a teacher had once shared with me, and I felt that it wove really nicely into the theme of suffering or resistance that I'm going to touch upon today. And I mentioned in a previous practice that mindfulness practices can look very different. So different teachers have different ways of teaching. And today I will blend insight practice. So that's when we start to investigate and look inwards. And then also using the body and the breath as a resource to be present and to just notice what arises. So we're creating a safe container to explore your thoughts and your emotions. But as always, I'd like you to honor where you're at today. So opening your eyes if you're finding that you need to look around and reorient yourself into the room if it ever becomes too much. Okay, so my teacher once shared this story and it stuck with me for, into this day because I always remember the resistance piece. So she shared that in many Asian countries, they have these very effective traps for catching sneaky monkeys that seem to get into a lot of trouble and they're mischievous. And what they do is a slot is made in the bottom of a coconut. So if you can think of a coconut and it's big enough for the monkey to slide their hand in, but not big enough for the monkey's hand to be withdrawn when it's clenched. So they put something sweet in the bottom of this coconut, they attach it to a tree, and they wait for the monkey to come along. And when the monkey slides its hand in and grabs that sweet food, it gets caught. And all the monkey really has to do is to let go of that sweet, open its hand and slide out, and it will be free. But rarely they do. Instead they stay stuck. They want that sweet. So I think this story really demonstrates a very fundamental idea that we talk about in mindfulness, which is suffering. And suffering equals pain times resistance. So I'll say that again, like an equation. So suffering equals pain times resistance. So I want you to take a moment to uncross your legs, put your feet on the floor, sit tall, take a few deep breaths here, and consider where in your life where your hand of thought is clenched. So just bringing your attention to any resistance or tightness. And quite often we want to bypass these areas of pain and resistance that causes us to suffer. So it's important to note that suffering is a part of the human experience. We're not going to bypass suffering, and we all suffer in different ways. And I think this year has been a great example of that. However, some of our suffering can be self-created. So with more resistance, suffering intensifies. So again, just breathing and taking a moment to just notice those areas of your life that you are resistant, or you have that tight fist like the monkey. And as you turn your attention there, see what happens in your body and your mind when you pay attention to these areas. You might notice that you attach stories to the emotions or thoughts or resistance. You might justify them or argue. And these stories may be totally valid and true, but seeing deeply inside requires not only looking at the emotion story, but also how the emotions land in the body and the mind. So again, just noticing and taking some deep breaths here, being insightful and noticing what emotions might bubble up. What is anger? What is sadness? How are you relating to these emotions? And again, the practice of mindfulness and insight is to be aware and shine that light of awareness within, so that the emotions do not hijack your life. So once we bring some awareness to it, we can then make wise or better choices, or really just start to notice. So again, if your eyes aren't closed, it might feel nice to just close them and take a big breath in. Pause at the top, and you might open your mouth and let the breath go, and let yourself be empty for a moment. And again, the practices of mindfulness, definitely that there is suffering, but there is also ways to alleviate suffering. So as you sit in awareness this morning, you can consider what it would feel like to loosen that clench or resistance that you noticed is happening right now in your life. And these can be really small things, or it could be something bigger that you're working with as a challenge. What would it feel like to loosen just a little bit that fist? Maybe starting to wiggle the wrist out of that coconut. And what would it feel like in your body and in your mind? And taking a few more deep breaths here. And as you notice areas that you could let go, and it might be letting go of a way that you think your caregiving should go, or the health system should go, doesn't mean that you do not care or that you do not advocate, but just noticing when we start to let go of some of the thoughts and resistance, that we might find different ways to solve problems, to get new solutions, to communicate in clear and effective ways. It does not mean that you care less or let it go completely. Again, we're just noticing and becoming aware. It might feel good to end your practice with a hand to the heart, maybe both hands on your heart, and feeling your heartbeat, that liveliness that tells you that you are alive and you are here right now. And I thank you so much for taking the time and the space to pause and to inquire within. And as always, if you are a caregiver or supporting a caregiver, we so appreciate you. And just know that we're here in the virtual space to support you. We're also here through one-to-one coaching or talking with our BC support call line. And please do reach out. Thank you.